We are live. What's up, Coop? We are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. Not much. Just turned 26. So
26.
26, man. I never ever thought I'd be this old. But
Nah,
yes,
neither did I.
26.
Well, happy
Yeah, man.
belated birthday, bro.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
That's nice. Everybody tell Coop happy birthday. 26. I think at that point, you don't even have to tell us how old you are, man. We don't really care once you get past a certain age.
Yeah, but, I'll be 26 probably for the next 4 years at
There you
least.
go. There you go.
And we'll see.
Right. All right, so we are live, and the reason we are live is to talk NBA. There's a lot going on right now if you guys aren't following NBA. And we are starting with breaking news. Literally, like right before we came live, the Clippers announced that Doc Rivers will not be back next year as head coach. We are just hearing of this, so instant reaction, Coop. Doc Rivers fired.
I'm not all that shocked, to be honest with you. This is something that we actually talked about right after they lost, was where we in or out on Doc Rivers. We both were out, and so were the Clippers, apparently. So it's kind of expected. You blew a 3-1 lead to a team that on paper was not as good as you.
Right.
So I'm not surprised. Now, I am interested to see where they go from here. Because as you know, granted, I don't think he's the best coach in the league, but like the best coaches in the league probably won't be available. And I certainly don't think Mike D'Antoni would be an option for them. He looks poised to take the Sixers job. We'll get to that maybe, but I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see where the Clippers go from here because. Yeah. How many coaches are actually better than Doc Rivers? There's probably only 4 or 5 in the league. When you look at possibly like Nurse, maybe Stevens.
Probably Stevens.
Definitely Pop, right? Definitely Kerr. So it's a small group of guys that you're looking at there that are. Spo, right? But none of those guys are going to be available here.
Right.
So it's maybe they're thinking Sam Cassell is the right guy. Maybe they move him up. Maybe they like Ty Lue.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're kind of from the Doc Rivers coaching tree. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that necessarily makes sense. But, it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. And I wonder if Kawhi signed off on this or if they even cared.
Well, I'm sure he did, right? At some point, they probably asked him, which is what I was thinking this. And I think when you think Doc, obviously he's highly respected and we never want to see anybody get fired. But we did talk about how this is a recurring thing with him in the playoffs. And he did get that one chip. But, obviously the success hasn't been there and it wasn't there this time. And there was a lot of stuff going on in that locker room. Sam Cassell, I think, and Ty Lue are probably the 2 names that you think of first. That's exactly who I went to first. I'm thinking, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But let me put on my hot take hat, as I'm known to do from time to time. We have talked kind of extensively about the Raptors and what they do now. Do they blow this up? Do they trade Siakam? With Lowry, he's got 1 year left. Red VanVleet is probably going to be gone. Gasol, Ibaka. Do you think that there's any possibility, any whiff of a possibility? Do you know where I'm going with this?
I think I do.
Kawhi puts in a call to Nick Nurse and says, listen, it was cool in Toronto. It's over. Come to the Clippers. Let's win together. I like you. You like me. Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, up until you just said it, no, I didn't think it was a possibility. But now
that makes sense, right?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense.
I'm trademarking that. I'm tweeting that right now before anybody else can.
Yeah, I mean, break the news. Break the news. I don't. It's a hot take for sure. But it's certainly. I think it makes sense. I don't know if it's a possibility.
I don't know either.
I'm sure there would have to be some kind of one. I don't know that the Raptors would willingly let him out of his contract to do that. Maybe they do a trade kind of situation, right? Like how Doc got to LA. The Clippers are known for trading for coaches. So,
yeah.
And they certainly don't need the draft picks.
Well, they don't have any left anyway, though. That's the
right.
problem.
Oh,
they don't
right,
really
right,
have anything to trade. It's like,
so yeah, that's the only
maybe
thing.
Maybe Shamit and Harrell. I don't know what you do.
Yeah, right. So I don't know how that works out, but that would be interesting to see.
What about Doc? Does Doc go anywhere? You think? But let's talk about Doc, because I think that and we talked about D'Antoni to the Sixers, and you don't like that. That's not set in stone. It looks like it might be happening.
Right.
But if I'm Elton Brand and Doc Rivers calls me and says, actually, I would like to throw my name in the hat there, I think I'm with that roster. I think I'd rather have Doc Rivers than
I
D'Antoni.
would 100% rather have Doc Rivers than Mike D'Antoni. I'd rather have Ty Lue. I'd rather have Sam Cassell. I'd rather have who else is in the mix here?
J Kidd, yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather have Jason Kidd. I literally anyone but Mike D'Antoni. Please send us anybody but Mike D'Antoni.
Yeah,
please. I will gladly take Doc Rivers over Mike D'Antoni in this case. And I think Embiid needs to say something if he wants to be a Sixer. And maybe they're planning for a future without him by even entertaining Mike D'Antoni. But to me, Mike D'Antoni is the Grim Reaper for Joel Embiid. So I don't know how much pull he has in that front office. Whatever pull he has needs to be exercised to get rid of the notion that we're going to hire Mike D'Antoni.
Well, I had heard, and I saw this on Twitter, that one of the reasons they were looking at D'Antoni was to potentially pull James Harden to Philly. But my thought is, if James Harden liked Mike D'Antoni, he probably would still be in Houston, right?
Right, unless he
wanted to leave, yeah.
Right, unless James Harden had made it clear that like Houston's roster couldn't be improved,
right,
and was kind of like, Mike, like let's get out of here, let's find somewhere else to go. Like I don't see why he wouldn't like Mike D'Antoni. He's the perfect guard for a Mike D'Antoni system. And for his play style, someone who needs the ball in his hands, who's going to give you the ball more than Mike D'Antoni?
Right, and that's I think I've said this before, but like this new coach that Harden is going to get, is Harden going to say like what happens when that guy draws up a real play? Like Harden is going to say fuck off, right? Like he's. That's not what we do here, right?
Not just when he draws up a play. When he draws up a play for Eric Gordon to come off a double screen,
right?
James Harden has to stand in the corner or move without the basketball guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's when it's like, well, what are we doing? This isn't what I signed up for. I signed up to shoot all the shots and only make the passes when I need to.
Yeah. Well, so here's another thing then. If you're looking for a coach who could actually command respect enough that James Harden isn't going to say, that's not what we do here.
Yeah.
Doc Rivers might be a guy.
Yeah, right.
Who could command that kind of respect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, certainly it would be a complete 180 from the Mike D'Antoni type coaching style, so that would be interesting to see. But I don't know, man. Maybe Doc Rivers hangs it up.
I don't think he's going to coach next year.
Maybe this is it for him. Maybe he joins the TNT crew or ESPN broadcast, something like that. I think. Well, I don't know about that voice, but maybe
the voice is bad.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not TV,
bad.
but like I don't know. I could see him on the on a talk show, something like that.
Yeah, or I could see him in a front office, or I could see him in league office. Really, like
right.
Especially with all the different initiatives that they're undergoing as a league with the social justice stuff.
Right.
By the way, it's not too late to still arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor. It's not too late. I know they charged one with a petty little stupid thing, but it's not too late. And I could see him taking a league office job. Actually, I think that would probably make a little bit of sense.
Yeah. So,
but maybe not coaching. Maybe he might not be done, but I think he takes at least a year off.
Yeah, maybe. Now, before we get to the next topic, this is a comment we had on YouTube. Yes.
Of course he does.
Goated. So, I got to get this jersey and my high school diploma, which isn't always the case. So yes, that is my high school jersey framed up there.
That shop looks nice. That's a man cave if I ever saw one.
Yeah. So before we move on, if you are watching our live, either on Facebook, Twitter, even on YouTube, as you can see, leave us comments. We'll post them up on the screen. If you have questions or a topic you want us to discuss, leave it in the comments. We'll talk about it at some point throughout the show. So if you're on Twitter or if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can find our Twitter handle here, and our other socials are also listed there at the bottom.
Yep. All right, let's get into Western Conference Finals wrapped up. Gentlemen sweep. Lakers beat the Nuggets. LeBron had a historic game 5. And the Lakers going back to the finals.
Yeah, man. It's funny. For 3 straight series, a guard hit a big shot in a game that team eventually won and got a little happy about it. Yep. And that team ended up losing in 5. Dame Lillard did it in the first game of round 1. Russ did it in the first game of round 2.
Yeah.
And Jamal Murray hit his shimmy.
Don't shimmy on LeBron. Don't shimmy on LeBron.
And the Lakers closed them out too in the next 2 games. But yeah, how incredible was LeBron in game 5, late down the stretch? Like, maybe we, if you were, maybe reverse psychology kind of thing and an anti-LeBron person, maybe you should have voted for him for MVP, to put some kind of complacency, because it does look like, just from his last 2 games alone, that lit a fire under him for sure. To kind of close out this series, and he looks back in full swing, or back at prime LeBron, which doesn't seem to ever end. It looks like that's back on.
Yeah, and maybe it's that. Maybe there's a fire, but also, like, he's just the best player. And we do this thing, and we've always done it, and I did it too. And we picked our playoff guy. We won it, and I said, I want Kawhi. I want Kawhi.
Yes, you did.
Kawhi's the guy. You can get to his spot. He plays good defense. Well, you know what? Turns out LeBron said, fuck off, Mike. You're an idiot. Yep. I'm LeBron James. I'm still doing this. I'm still the best player in the league. We continue to throw people's names out there year after year to compete with LeBron as the best player in the league. The only one who really had a case was Kevin Durant after the 17 and 18 seasons. But LeBron is still the guy.
Yeah.
And he's going to go to his 10th finals now. Listen, I don't know what happened, okay? I just want to say it. I've always been a LeBron guy. I've always been the biggest LeBron guy. Even before this season, before last season, when he won it in 2016, LeBron was the GOAT.
Yeah.
And something happened. Something happened in my chemical makeup in my brain. And I said, Jordan's the GOAT.
I'll tell you what happened, because as long as I've known you that was the case. I'll tell you what happened. The Jordan documentary.
The stupid Jordan doc.
Jordan documentary.
The coronavirus and the Jordan doc.
Yep.
And I missed him.
It went straight to your head, man, because we started our podcast right towards the end of that. And all of a sudden, you had Jordan as the GOAT. You and Todd, who is also a known LeBron lover, who we need to get Todd back on the show, by the way. But
he'll be back.
Speaking of, you and Todd both were known LeBron guys as long as I've known, both of you. And all of a sudden, the Jordan doc aired. LeBron was no longer the GOAT. He wasn't even the best player in the playoffs. And I tried to tell you guys, I was like, hold on, wait a minute.
Sad.
LeBron's still the GOAT. And what's crazy? I never thought I would be that person where I'm like going to bat for LeBron as the GOAT. But because I was a Kobe fan growing up, so I was not in on LeBron being the GOAT. And until he beat the Warriors and came back from down 3-1, I think that stamped it. But it's crazy, right? How the time
crazy. Well, he's going to his 10th finals now, 3rd different team, and and we can say what we want. Anthony Davis, I think Anthony Davis right now is his best teammate he's ever had. Maybe it's D Wade in 2011, but those are the top 2. But look at the rest of this team, and this is the thing we always say about LeBron is when he left Cleveland the first time, they were the worst team in the league. When he left Miami, they were actually in shambles for a couple of years. A really good organization in Miami was in shambles for 2 or 3 years after LeBron left. He leaves Cleveland the second time, same thing, worst team in the league. But, like, look at the Lakers team right now. Like, we could say what we want about Anthony Davis. Take LeBron off this Lakers team. Look at that team. I'll ask you, Coop. How many games does this team win? Caruso, Danny Green, Kyle Kuzma, AD, and Dwight, with Rondo and KCP coming off the bench. That's a 35 to 40 win team. Well, I know this is true because Anthony Davis's Pelicans teams were better than that. Anthony Davis Pelicans, and they couldn't make the playoffs. And if they did, they were a first round exit. 1 year they get out of the first round. This is special what LeBron can do with these guys. Jordan could never do this with these guys. Jordan left the Bulls. They almost made the finals. They probably should have made the finals if Scottie Pippen doesn't throw a temper tantrum maybe. LeBron is the GOAT. Put me on record. I made a mistake. I should have never said he wasn't the GOAT. It's special, man, and we get to witness it. You know, I don't know if we're ever going to see a guy do this 9 and 10 years.
Yeah.
And the only year he didn't go, he was hurt.
Right, exactly. You know, and it, like you said, this, if you really, really look at this Lakers roster without LeBron, it's bad. Like it's not good at all. But then LeBron makes it look good, you know, and you know, he somehow has revived Dwight Howard, or maybe, you know, it's just him changing Dwight Howard's role and his expectations is what revived him. I don't know. But like Dwight Howard looks good, you know, and maybe his health also is factoring in that. But like, you know, he's revived Dwight Howard essentially. JaVale McGee has been about the same as he's been the last few years. I think he's actually been pretty solid. But, you know, Alex Caruso looks better. Only person who like doesn't really look better than he was is like Kyle Kuzma. And of course that's because he's not nearly getting the volume, you know what I mean, that he was getting when they were awful. So like,
and he sucks. Let's be fair. He
right.
Sucks.
He probably wasn't as good as we thought he was. He was on a bad team. But still a serviceable guy for the Lakers here. And, you know, I don't know, man. It's strange. And it's like, there's only one person who we can really look back and say like, dang, bro, he went to 10 finals and 9 in the last 10 years.
It's crazy.
And like you said, the one he didn't go was a season where he missed a significant amount of time. Like, we'll probably never see that again. Like, I guess Bill Russell did something similar, but like that was, we're 8 teams in the league there. And,
right.
And I'm sorry if there's an old head watching this that I'm downplaying what Bill Russell did, but like to do it now is totally different. And to do it with 3 franchises, one that was abysmal for its entirety and has been abysmal without him, right, in the Cavs. Then you go to the Heat, who had their one magical run, but then when he got there, obviously they were one of the best teams in the league. Obviously, they won 2 straight championships there and went to 4 finals. And now he's back with a legendary franchise that wasn't so legendary. It's been 10 years since they've been back to the finals. Obviously, after, you know, Kobe's prime ended, they were awful. Yeah. And he's revived this franchise. It's just like everywhere he goes, he's pumping life back into the franchise. And granted, Anthony Davis had a lot to do with that as well, because he's a stud. I don't want to make it seem like we're downplaying his role in making it to these finals, but like the common denominator in the last in 9 of the last 10 NBA finals is LeBron James. Like, no matter who has made it from East or West, there's one common denominator in the last decade of the NBA finals, and that's LeBron. And there's just, you know, I think we just have to give a round of applause for that, man.
Yeah, he is special. It's just, I mean, he's the GOAT for me. I don't think I think at this point, if you have him lower than 2, you're just hating.
Yeah, by far.
You know what I mean? At this
You're
point,
Paul Pierce hating.
Well, even Paul Pierce said if he wins, he's number 2, which is probably still hating a little bit.
Right.
So yeah, but the Lakers, and you mentioned the roster, and we'll kind of transition this to talking about the Heat beating the Celtics. But before we do, I saw a thing on Twitter today, and I responded to it. It said, name the 10 best players in the finals. And I think LeBron and AD are 1 and 2.
By far.
But then I think the next 7 I had as Heat players. And then maybe Rondo or Dwight is in there as well.
Yeah. you certainly look at depth of the individual players. The Heat are the more well-rounded team by far. I don't even think that's a discussion. Without looking at the two rosters right now, I would agree with you that the next 7 players go into advantage of the Heat. However, we're running into a similar situation that the Lakers have been in all year with the way that they put this team together. Is who guards LeBron, who guards Anthony Davis? Like, you might have one for one of them. Do you have someone for the other?
Yep.
And in this case, the Heat actually have some of LeBron's toughest defenders, where Andre Iguodala, I think, might have a case as his toughest defender all time. He's not quite the same that he's been, but just over their careers, I think Andre Iguodala has defended him better than anyone else, if you ask me. Jay Crowder has been used on the multiple different teams to try to be the LeBron stopper. He's not a LeBron stopper by any means. But
but here's the thing too about LeBron is
no one's
a LeBron stopper.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So but Jay Crowder can hold his own, right? Sure. Like Jay Crowder's not going to get embarrassed unless LeBron's feeling it. And you're probably not relying on him to be on LeBron for a large period. Maybe he's guarding Anthony Davis. Sometimes smaller defenders tend to bother AD, so that could be something that they look at. But then you have Jimmy Butler, who back when he was with Chicago, he was the guy often tasked with guarding LeBron. Granted, it didn't work out for the Bulls, but I don't know that you could necessarily just say it's because of Jimmy Butler. There were a lot of factors going into that. But Jimmy Butler will obviously be a tough, defender on LeBron.
Yes.
Will they hold him under 25, 27 points? Probably not. But what you want to do when you're trying to defend LeBron is make him as inefficient as possible. They have 3 guys who you can kind of look at and say, all right, well, these guys can hold up against LeBron. It's not like we're putting Duncan Robinson on him. But I don't know how many guys they truly have that can guard AD. And I say that because I think Bam can guard him. But Bam has to guard Dwight or JaVale. You know what I mean? Because from a rebounding standpoint, and most likely Dwight is going to get the start at the 5. But from a rebounding standpoint, you can't put Jay Crowder on Dwight Howard. That's bully ball on the boards. But I think you could put Jay Crowder on Anthony Davis. And maybe that's what they kind of look at and say, just try to, push him off the block as far as you can and see, if we can get him as far away from the basket as possible. Maybe that's kind of your strategy there. But outside of Jay Crowder, then who's your next defender? You need multiple defenders to throw at both of these guys, because if you want to throw a star player off, you've got to throw him different looks throughout a game. So then when Jay Crowder's not in the game, who are you going to? When AD's at 5, you throw Bam on him, but their backup bigs are not defenders at all. You have Kelly Olynyk. I don't know that we'll see Myers Leonard at all in this series, but he would be their other backup 4 or 5. I don't want either of those guys guarding Anthony Davis at any point throughout the game. So that's where it kind of gets tricky again, is who guards AD.
And we say this every series. Who guards AD? And also who guards LeBron.
Right.
Let's just dive into the Heat a little bit here then. I believe the Heat have to play Myers Leonard versus – well, that is an interesting take from our friend Doug, and we don't have to address that take. But so let's talk about the Heat. They took care of the Celtics in 6. Celtics kind of looked disoriented against the Heat.
Yeah,
it was not what we were expecting to see after their performance against Toronto. They had a ton of turnovers in the series. The Heat didn't really even shoot that well, besides Taylor Hero in a couple of games and Duncan Robinson here and there. But they were the tougher team, and they won. So we're going to talk about the Heat here more so when we talk about this NBA Finals preview, which we already kind of started. But as far as the Celtics going forward, do you like this roster? Is there changes to be made? Are they a piece away?
I do. I think they're a piece away. I like Tice, but I don't think he's a starting center in the NBA. I think he's a very good backup. So maybe you look at a possible upgrade there, and maybe find more of someone who's better suited to play a stretch 4 role. I I don't know, maybe you want to move Tatum to the 3, maybe go with Kemba, Jaylen Brown, Tatum. And if you can find a solid 4, maybe you do that. They seem to like to start smart and then slide, Brown to the 3, Tatum to the 4.
Right.
I think for that, you need a little more rim protection or maybe a more, versatile 5. I would love this team if they still had Al Horford. I think they should have fought a little bit harder to keep him. He might have made the difference in this series against Bam. They had no answer for Bam especially in Game 6. He was, he destroyed Tice for the most part. So I think the 5 position is kind of where they can make their best upgrade. And I think they need a little more guard depth. Obviously, Gordon Hayward being fully healthy maybe changes the series. Even when he came back, he wasn't the same. But that's a lot of money. Also, Gordon Hayward is a lot of money to pay someone coming off the bench. I don't know if you move that contract or not. I'm sure some rebuilding team might take it and you can find some way to do it that way in a 3-team or something. But I think you have to get that contract off your books in order to really improve this team and add, maybe Miles Turner from the Pacers.
Right.
I think he'd be a nice fit for the Celtics team as a stretch 5 and rim protector. Or, somebody of that nature, I think would be a good fit for the Celtics. So I think they're 2 pieces away. I think they're a starting center and a backup guard away, a guard who can give them some offense off the bench away from them getting past this Eastern Conference Finals, stage.
Yeah, and the Gordon Hayward thing, he's not himself. He'll never be his Utah self. But, when we're kind of looking at this, and I was talking to Todd last night about this, actually, as far as worst contracts in the league, obviously, John Wall is probably the worst, and Russell Westbrook's probably the second worst because they're aging guards on huge deals, and you aren't going to be able to move those. But, Gordon Hayward is probably a top 5 to top 10 worst contract in the league because there's no other role players on a max deal. He's just coming off the bench and giving you 25 to 30 minutes a game on a max deal. That could have been money that you threw at Al Horford.
Yeah, right.
And the bench depth, and he gives you nice pieces of, they're playing Wanamaker and Semi Ojeleye less. But if they weren't paying him, they could have maybe got 2 or 3 better bench guys with that money. So I think the Gordon Hayward thing is a problem. And the last thing about the Celtics, so I think we have this thing about Brad Stevens, and Brad Stevens is just, when we think of best coaches, he just automatically pops to the top of our list. And we do this with football coaches too, because he's young and he's tall and he's handsome. And we think that guy is a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. Okay. So let's look at why we think Brad Stevens is this great coach. First reason, he was good at Butler, and he made the Final Four with Butler. Well, I got to be honest. I don't give a shit about what he did at Butler. I don't care what Rick Pitino did in college because he was terrible in the NBA. I don't care what John Calipari did in college because he was terrible in the NBA. The second thing that happened was he took that Jason Tatum rookie year led Celtics team to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's impressive. They didn't beat anybody. They did not beat a single good team in the playoffs that year to make the Eastern Conference Finals. So if I'm supposed to look at that and say, well, he did that, so he must be a top 5 coach. He must be a top 7 coach in the league.
Right.
Well, that doesn't actually mean that so much, okay?
Right.
When you look at what he did with probably his best roster was last year. And with his best roster last year, they lost in the second round. He could not get a grasp on Kyrie Irving because Kyrie didn't respect him. I think Kyrie is a problem for a lot of locker rooms. But if you're looking for a solid top 5 coach, you have to be able to control a player like that.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it. Kyrie imploded. And now we're looking at it in the second round against Nick Nurse. Really, Brad Stevens lost the coaching battle. I know the Celtics won the series, but if you looked at the talent, you matched up the talent, and you said, how should this series have gone? It should not have gone 7 games. The Celtics had a lot more talent than the Raptors. They were up 2-0. They should have been up 3-0, and it ends up going 7 games. Nick Nurse won that series in a coaching battle against Brad Stevens. And then you come to this series, Coach Spo kicked the actual shit out of Brad Stevens. He was throwing that zone at him, and Brad Stevens, granted, a lot of it's on the players on the court. But if I'm Brad Stevens and I'm coming from college and I'm supposed to be the top 5 coach in the league and I'm supposed to be this young protege, smartest guy, one of the most smartest coaches in the league, I have to be able to have my guys figure out the zone.
Yeah.
At least to some degree. I feel like me and you maybe could have put our heads together and done a better job getting our guys to beat that zone. And obviously Brad Stevens, he's a smart guy. He's an NBA basketball coach. But
Right.
like to be considered one of the best, you have to be able to do something to figure this out. They struggled with it against Toronto, but they have the guys to win. They struggled with it even worse against Miami, and they couldn't figure it out. So Brad Stevens, I'm sorry, I can't have him in this top 5 coaching thing. He's on the fringe of top 10 for me right now, but he got his ass kicked by Eric Spoelstra.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been something that is overlooked a little bit because the Celtics have been overachieving to many people's opinions until this year. I think, they kind of went as far as we expected them to go. And, maybe if they get to the finals, we're having a different conversation. But yeah, like the one thing that kind of like is strange to me about this Celtics team is they don't quite move the ball like they did. You know what I mean? Like the ball gets a little bit stagnant. And it's kind of like, all right, well, it's Kemba, it's your turn. We'll play through you. Or now Jaylen Brown, it's your turn. We'll play through you. Or Tatum, it's your turn. We'll play through you. You know what I mean? Where it's a lot of like one guy dominating the ball kind of thing, which is not normally what a Brad Stevens offense typically looks like.
Right.
And, I got to give some credit to my dad in this case. He kind of made a point where like Brad Stevens is good at coaching lesser players, but he's not good at coaching the best players. So like Brad Stevens will forever overachieve with a Butler, with the Celtics when they're young, right? And Terry Rozier, no Kyrie Irving, right? Sure. Like those are the kind of teams that excel under a Brad Stevens because he does get you to buy those are the guys he gets to just buy into the system. And that when he's actually coaching his style of play, it does work. It's when he has guys who develop into stars like, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are now on the rise, and Kemba Walker has kind of taken a back seat to these guys, but he's still Kemba Walker at the end of the day. So now he's kind of has this 3-headed monster where these guys are, for some reason, not playing off of each other. They're allowing 1, 2, or 3 or one of those guys to go at certain points throughout the game, rather than it being, all right, let's get some movement, let's get some easy looks, let's hit the middle of the zone and move the ball throughout the zone, rather than trying to pick and roll the zone, and things like that. There wasn't that cohesiveness amongst those three, which ultimately I think is what did them in this series, and also their inability to defend Bam on the other end didn't help. So or Tyler Herro in game 4. So it's I think if Brad Stevens can find a way to coach stars better, then I think we're talking about one of the best coaches in the league. Like that's kind of what Greg Popovich does, right? Like other than maybe Kawhi, Greg Popovich has always gotten every star player, and maybe it's just the type of stars he recruits, but his star players have always bought in and played Spurs basketball.
Sure.
That doesn't necessarily happen with the Celtics.
Well, Phil Jackson, when we talk about Phil Jackson, the biggest thing that we could say about Phil Jackson is he took Michael Jordan and that team who didn't respect their last coach, and he made them buy in. He took Kobe and Shaq, who Kobe was the best player. Not Kobe. I'm sorry. Shaq was the best player in the league. Kobe was this young protege who was smarter had a higher basketball IQ than anybody he ever met coming up, and he made them buy in. Yeah. And then when Phil wasn't there, we saw how it went with Kobe. Right. So he has to figure that out. Yeah. He got his ass kicked. So let's stop talking about the Celtics because they're losers. Let's talk about the Heat. Then our guy Jimmy Butler vindicated in some way.
In a lot of ways.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, man. And as someone who was okay with him not coming back, I feel responsible to continue to say that because You know, I was a little bit wrong, but granted, we'll revisit this 3 to 4 years from now when he's 33 or 34, which is the real reason I didn't want them to sign him to a 5-year extension. But whatever. At this moment in time, Jimmy Butler has come out smelling like roses. And in the biggest way was he was perceived or painted as, after the Minnesota thing, this like cancerous dude in the locker room. Now, me, I never agreed with that. I never saw it that way. I saw a guy trying to elevate the level of play amongst his teammates. And, you know, he finally found the culture where he could be that guy. And it's actually pretty beautiful, honestly, to see, because, you know, he looks genuinely happy, like just from a basketball standpoint. And he's been talking about it all year, right? He's been trying to tell people, like, no, this Heat team is good now. We don't need Giannis in 2021 or a big free agent in 2021. Like, we can win it right now. And they can. Like, I think they can, which we'll get to eventually. They can beat this Lakers team. Like we said, they're the more talented and deep team. Whether that'll happen, we'll get into. But they certainly can do it. And you know, they will do it without having one of the top 5 players in the league per se, because the culture that they've developed is you know, is a healthy one, and it's been, they call it like Heat culture, right? Spo and Pat Riley have developed this culture of accountability, where no matter who you are, you come in, you put the work in. They have this ridiculous conditioning thing that even Jimmy Butler had to adjust to, you know what I mean, to start their season. So like everybody goes through it. And it's, you know, it's when everybody steps into the locker room and is treated the same way, right? And held accountable the same way. That's where great cultures and things like this start to happen. A 5 seed gets to an NBA finals when everybody buys in to the culture, everybody fits the culture, and then your leader, you know, that who is your best player doesn't have that ego where it's like, I need to be the guy, right? He doesn't have that kind of mentality where he's like, I have to come out and score 25 to 30 points for us to win. No, I just need to compete as hard as I possibly can, so that everybody else in here will compete as hard as they possibly can, and then we'll just live with the results. And then, you know, we'll have this mentality and this confidence amongst us where it's like, you know, it doesn't matter who we're playing against. We know we're going to play as hard as we can. And really that scares other teams, if you ask me, when you have to play the Heat and you're like, dang, man, like I got to play the Heat tonight. You know what I mean? Like I have to, it's going to be a physical game. Like they're going to be all up in my face defensively. Like as a player, that kind of stuff sits in the back of your mind, man.
Right.
And it's beautiful to see Jimmy Butler finally find a roster and a franchise where he can be that tenacious leader that, you know, he was trying to be in Minnesota and even Philly.
All right, do you want to play a game that I did not prepare you for? My favorite thing is to throw quick, rapid-fire questions at you and did not prepare you for them.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do this. So we'll do this one, like close to one-word answers, or if you can. Okay, first one, Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo, true or false, is a top 10 player in the NBA?
False, but approaching.
Okay, Jimmy Butler is a top 10 player in the NBA.
Top what?
Top 10.
Yes, true.
Top 7.
I'm trying not to have recency bias here.
But he's going to the finals.
Right. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this.
Top 7.
This might be a better question than that even. Okay, you are doing a fantasy draft of the players in the league, okay? You have your pick. You can either take Jimmy Butler for your team to be your guy, or you can take James Harden.
Ooh, I'm going to set Houston Rockets Twitter on fire. If I'm building a team, I want Jimmy Butler as my guy.
So do I.
I think it's much easier to develop a team around Jimmy Butler than it is around James Harden. You get James Harden, you have to get 4 standstill shooters who you pray also play defense. How often is that? You know, Jimmy Butler, you can put shooters, scorers, defenders, big men. Like, these are all types of players that you
Right.
can fit with Jimmy Butler, and it's just easier to construct a team around him. And I think he is a better leader.
He's definitely a better leader. And the thing is, too, is like, people say, like, Butler is like, he's hard on his teammates, or you might not want him with your young guys because he's going to ride them. Well, like, if they're the type of player who can't play with Jimmy Butler, I don't think I want them on my team.
No, not at all.
Right? I don't want that guy. I don't want Karl Anthony Towns or Andrew Wiggins who can't handle him coming at them and bringing that intensity, because, and Michael Jordan and Kobe, obviously he's not close to that level, but
Right.
that was the attitude when he's the best player on the team. And maybe, he's obviously not as good as them, but that's the culture you want for your team. You don't want the Houston culture of relaxed and easygoing. Like, I want my guys to be dogs, and that's why.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've said this before, but I think that's why he went to Miami. Right? He saw that team. He talked to Pat Riley, and Pat Riley said, "You don't want to stay in Philly. Look at those guys. They're not dogs. Those guys are losers. They've been losing since they came into the league. They're famous for losing. Trust the process is about losing."
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's why Jimmy said, "I don't want to play with these losers. I want guys who are dogs." And that's why I think I would taking Jimmy over Harden and start my team.
And before you shoot me another one,
okay.
The Miami Heat are another example that tanking is not the way to build your franchise.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. It's rebuilding.
And the Celtics.
Right.
You don't got to tear it all. You don't have to put Tony Roten as your best player to get good draft picks, guys. You don't have to build solely through the draft.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. Okay, that's all the questions I had. That's all the questions. So I just want to see where we're now, putting Jimmy Butler in our rankings, because, like, when we talk about rankings, one of the things that we always bring up first things is, like, he took this team to the finals. He was the best player on this team who went to the finals. So, like, Jimmy gets a big bump now. Bam gets a big bump now. So finals preview. I know you already kind of got into a lot of it. So give us anything you had left plus a prediction.
So, I mean, I think some of the keys here to watch before I give my prediction from the Heat standpoint is transition defense. That is where the Lakers make their money, is getting out and running. But the Heat have horses, guys who are athletic and quick and can get up and down the floor. It's going to be crucial for them to be able to play this game in the half court, I think, because their half court offense is way better than LA's, if you ask me. From a spacing standpoint, from a ball movement standpoint, I like theirs a lot better. For the Lakers, I think one of their biggest keys is going to be Rondo off the bench and how the Heat deal with him defensively. The Heat guards are defensive liabilities. He's played really well throughout this postseason and has given them a completely different dynamic on the offensive end in allowing LeBron to, one, take rests and not have the ball in his hands when they're on the floor together, or when he's off the floor. They now have a second person who can make plays that they didn't have. So that's been a game changer. And how the Heat manage that is going to be crucial. And then for the Lakers, how are they going to handle that zone? Like, I think we're going to see that zone quite a bit here in this series, especially against a team that you don't think is a good shooting team. Like, they've shot it better, but they're not known for hitting outside shots. And that's kind of the point of the zone, is to, in some cases, the point of a zone is to kind of make you shoot from outside. However, the Lakers have offensive rebounding and guys who will crash the glass, which is one of the negatives of a zone. So will the zone work the way it did against Boston? It remains to be seen. Just looking at this series, a lot of times when you have evenly matched teams, which I think, the Lakers had the star power, but the Heat had the depth. So that evens it out to me. A lot of times it comes down to who's the best player on the floor. And LeBron is the answer to that question. The second answer to that question would be Anthony Davis, especially when you're looking at matchups across the board when the Heat have to play man-to-man. I'm not sure that they'll be able to handle Anthony Davis. Ultimately, I think that's what decides this series. And strangely, we've done all this talking of LeBron. Anthony Davis, I think, might be the one that wins Finals MVP here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the Heat in 6.
Whoa.
No. I'm sorry. Lakers in 6.
Oh, man.
6. Anthony Davis wins Finals MVP. LeBron loses his first Finals MVP.
Okay. Yeah, I think the transition D thing you bring up is huge. Also, the Coach Spoelstra and LeBron dynamic, I think, is going to be probably one of the best storylines to watch, is how he defends LeBron, obviously having coached him. And not only having coached him, but having coached him at his worst in the 2011 series. And
Mavs ran his own.
And Mavs ran his own. And probably having coached him at his best, too. Some of those, Miami seasons where he won MVP were some of the best LeBron we've ever seen. So it'll be interesting to see how Spo attacks him with the zones, who he throws at him, what type of lineups they throw at them. You might see less Duncan Robinson in this series. I wouldn't be surprised to see Miami go bigger in certain points and just stack up a zone if they do run one. Sometimes they throw Crowder or Iguodala at the top of the zone, and they really switch things up nicely in that zone. It's the best zone I've seen an NBA team run probably ever.
Yeah.
With that being said, LeBron is too much. And I think anytime you're in a series and the two best players are on one team, even if the Heat all have their best series, and that's what it's going to take, is all of them stepping up big time. Yeah. LeBron knows how to get the job done. And Anthony Davis is still the second best player in this series. The Bam AD matchup, if that is a matchup, I would assume that that's going to be a matchup at least for a lot of the time. That's a good one to watch. We'll see if Jimmy, I wouldn't be surprised if when they're in man, Jimmy kind of raises his hand and says, I got Bron. You know what I mean? Because he kind of looks at himself as that level, right? I think when Jimmy approaches this series, and this is one of the reasons we like Jimmy as well, is he looks at it and says, yeah, it's me and LeBron. Of course it's me and LeBron. And he wants to probably guard LeBron. So it's going to be tough. I think every game is close. Every game is going to be – this is one of those ones that every game is close, but I got Lakers in 5. The Heat get game 2, and it's 1-1, but then they do the gentleman's sweep. Every game is close except maybe one of them, game 4. Maybe it's game 5 to close out. But I think LeBron and AD are just too much. But credit to this Heat team. I think they are the second best team in the league. I just think the Lakers are this good.
Now we got a fan question. If Miami were to win, who on that team is more likely to win MVP, Bam or Jimmy Butler? I think that's a valid question.
I think that's a great question. I would probably go with Bam because if they win, that means they're probably shutting down Anthony Davis to some degree, and that's probably going to fall on Bam. Also, if you watch him offensively in Game 6 against Boston, 30 points, 15-plus rebounds, he really does it all. And the other thing about him is we know what he does defensively. The offense actually goes through him more than it does anybody else.
Yep.
And Jimmy, as good as Jimmy is, and as much as we love Jimmy, when we're talking about scoring, and we're talking about who's going to win MVP in the series, Jimmy actually hasn't really been doing that so much in a high degree. I mean, he's had games where he's 12, 15 points. I think he only cracked 20 points once or twice in the Eastern Conference Finals. So he's probably not going to put up these huge numbers and win the MVP. If he does win the MVP, it's probably because they have 5 or 6 guys scoring in double figures. Maybe they have 5 guys scoring 15-plus, and he's maybe leading the way. And because he's maybe he takes on the defensive assignment of LeBron, even though I think they're probably going to throw Crowder and Iguodala more so at LeBron and have Jimmy, pick his spots almost. But also, if Miami were to win, I don't think Miami's going to win. Tyler Hero would be a candidate for MVP as well, because if they win, they're going to need big games out of Tyler Hero, similar to the 37-point performance. Probably not that much, but he's going to have to be averaging close to 25 points a game. And he's going to have to make 6 threes a game. So Tyler Hero might be a good dark horse. If you think the Heat are going to win, maybe he's a dark horse. But I would say the Lakers are going to win. So there's a lot of good players in this series.
Yeah. So I would agree with that. I would say Bam would be the guy who likely wins MVP if Miami does pull it off. Simply like for all the reasons you just said, they mostly play and run their offense through Bam. And I think a lot of times, like the better he plays, the more likely they are to win. So if they're going to win this series, Bam's going to have to be the best player on the floor for them. If they get that kind of production out of Tyler Harrell off the bench, he does become a candidate as well. I think Dragic is another guy that we
absolutely
have to look out for in this case because he was really good against the Celtics. As far as especially on the offensive end.
Oh yeah,
I think this is another series where he could get off again. The Lakers guards have been pretty good defensively, but I would like the matchup for Goran Dragic with the way he's been playing. So, I think he's another dark horse if Miami were to win it in that case. But yeah, I would say Bam is probably the best one.
Yeah, I go with Bam for the Heat. Okay, so I've got Lakers in 5. You've got Lakers in 6.
Yep.
That's pretty much all we had basketball talk today. That's all we had for the live show. Anything else, Coop?
Yes. Thank you guys again for tuning in to another episode. Make sure if you're watching on whatever platform you're watching on, you find our YouTube link. It's on our Facebook, Twitter pages, and go hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening in on audio, make sure you leave a like and a rating as well. Make sure you are subscribing on the audio platform that you're listening on. Remember, you can find our audio versions on Apple, Spotify, Google, Overcast, pretty much any platform streaming podcast.
Yes, absolutely. So make sure you are subscribed to this YouTube channel. Turn on the notification button. So we are live today. We are going to go live a lot of the time. So turn on the notifications and you'll know exactly when we go live, and you can tune in and you can ask us questions as we go, and your comments will maybe appear on the screen as we go, and we might just talk about them like we just did with that Bam or Jimmy MVP discussion.
Yeah.
Follow us on Twitter at all_in_pod. Go to the website, allinnetwork.net. We have a lot of great content on the blog nowadays. Politics, culture, world news, and sports, of course, are all on there. That's the place to go to see it all, allinnetwork.net. That's all we got today, guys. Thank you for tuning into the live show. And go subscribe and go download those audio plays. Thanks for listening.
See you guys later this week.
Thanks, guys.